Welcome back to another episode of Timebreaker Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel.
And I'm Anthony.
And on this episode, we're going over the newly released 007 film, No Time to Die. This is Daniel Craig's final outing as the character. And overall, I'd say he ended off on a positive. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, I thought it was excellent, to be honest. I just recently rewatched Spectre, and way worse the second time watching that movie. So now I'm sitting here with No Time to Die. I'm like, yep, this is now my second favorite behind Casino Royale.
Interesting. I went and rewatched all of them within the last week, and I've seen this film twice in the last 24 hours. So I've got my fair share of Bond, and I don't know. It's definitely top 3 for me. I've been reshuffling my list. Like Skyfall has suddenly taken probably the top spot for me right now. And No Time to Die is definitely the gap between No Time to Die and then Quantum of Solace and Spectre is huge. So it's just I don't know. I have to sit on it more before I give my top official rating. But it's definitely one of the good ones. They knocked it out of the park with this one. It's kind of long, but I didn't really feel it. I know that some people were complaining about the runtime or it feels kind of draggy here, but I mean compared to Spectre, this one moves way faster in my opinion.
I mean, this movie is no Black Panther because at least for me and you, Black Panther, we literally were sitting there and then we realized we were in the end, and I'm like, what? What happened to the last 2 hours?
Yeah, but we're definitely just gonna go talk brief thoughts first, and then we'll get into box office numbers, and then we'll give the spoiler warning and dive deep as we always do. So overall, really solid. I love how Daniel Craig just brings a humanity to the role. It's just a much more grounded, and you see a lot more emotion out of him this time around. And I don't know if it's just having me seeing all of them recently and just watching that progression, but this movie really hit me in certain scenes, and just watching his character grow and the relationships he's made with these other characters. It was just something really special. And they definitely are constantly evolving these movies. The action's getting crazier, and they did a lot of callbacks to other the franchise formulas, even though I haven't seen any of them. But they introduced a lot more gadgets in this one, which I know they try to stay shy away from in the first ones, like Casino Royale and stuff, because they wanted to do their own thing. But now, since he's been the character for so long, they wanted to really honor some of those past Bond films, and I think it just delivers a really nice package here in the end.
Yeah, I would agree. It really wrapped up nicely, and I wasn't quite sure walking in where this movie was going to go, because, I mean, as far as wrapping a bow, I mean, Spectre mostly did that. I mean, they literally drove off into the sunset, so I'm like, where do you take it from here? And they actually came up with quite the story. I mean, I personally wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, after Spectre, it seemed like a really tied up way of closing it all, and Spectre was kind of looking back at all the previous movies, but this one does it as well, and I'd argue it puts it ties an even better bow at the end off, and it really goes to show you that how much Daniel Craig is put his all into this role, and just on this final outing. There was a lot of questions earlier, was he going to come back and do another one? And then he finally did, and we're like, oh, what's it going to be like? And then they even had director changes, and so there was a lot of stuff going on. And then, of course, with the pandemic, with lots of delays. So finally seeing this film is really nice to finally get that nice send-off to the character.
It's the only movie that's come out during the pandemic where, I waited and I waited and I waited, and it paid off. Black Widow was okay, and I thought it was good, but I wasn't absolutely amazed with what it did. And so, sitting here for the last year, it finished all of its advertisements, so I was expecting it to just be sluggish because it'd been so overhyped. But I was just sitting there and I had a good time. And I think the last time I was had this good of a time at the movies was probably A Quiet Place Part 2 earlier this year, in terms of a movie that was supposed to come out a while ago and finally did.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had a lot of excitement with this film. Same thing I did with Shang-Chi. I felt really good after that one too, but I feel that one didn't have as much anticipation as this one did.
It definitely didn't have the barrier at which it was trying to hold expectations at wasn't like Bond. I mean, Bond had literally put its final trailers and its last push to marketing. It was the first movie that got pushed, and this movie has just been pushed and pushed and pushed. And I mean, I've told you earlier this year that I was pretty sure it was going to get delayed again into next year, and thankfully it didn't, because I don't know if the movie could have taken another delay.
Yeah, like all those delays, just constantly remarketing stuff just bumps up the budget and the cost of this film. And so I'm glad that they were able to put it out to some success, with the box office. It's not like crazy numbers like we saw with like Venom, but I still say it's like healthy for the franchise. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I absolutely think it's healthy, and I think arguing that it's supposed to open like a superhero movie is just wrong, in the sense that it never was. I don't know where these $100 million openings like predictions were coming from, because no Bond has done it before. So not only would it have to pretty much exceed pandemic records, like what we've seen so far, as well as top any other Bond movie before this. And I was like, that's highly unlikely, because Skyfall was super well liked and it opened without a pandemic.
Yeah, and what did it open to?
Well, Spectre opened to like 70 something million, and Skyfall opened to 80 million, and this one's coming in right behind both of them at 56 million, which, opening during the pandemic, I say that is an absolute total win, because I guarantee there are people who would love to see this movie who just aren't comfortable going back to a theater yet. Like, things have improved over the last few months, but we're definitely not, back to full normal, and I don't know when we will. I'd love to know what we're going to see over the next few weeks, because this is from MGM, and so this is not going to go, I guarantee it's not going to streaming until at least 30 days, if not longer, and I'm curious to see what it does at home. How many people are going to rent this? How many people are going to buy this? It's a very interesting, movie to look at.
Yeah, and it definitely has a potential for the legs. And also you have to another thing you have to consider, I know it's not has to do too much with it, but if you look at like something with a Venom opening with those crazy numbers versus like a Bond, you have to look at it like Venom is like only 90 minutes long basically, and this one's like around 245. So you can show Venom way more times than you can show Bond. So that also doesn't help it. And again, it's not a superhero movie. And again, like we said with the Skyfall numbers and then the Spectre numbers, like this franchise more or less is like trailing downwards. That's not to say the quality of the movies are going downwards. Maybe it has to do something with how like Spectre was received. But then again, like I don't know like how much of the audience from like superhero movies compares to like the fans of Bond films,
Ironically though, Spectre, I mean, yes, its overall box office numbers are lower than Skyfall, but it made almost $900 million compared to Skyfall's $1.1 billion. I mean, yes, it's a negative, but is it such a detrimental negative? And obviously not. We're sitting here talking about No Time to Die.
Right. So like it still was like profitable, and it's still a huge franchise, This is one of the biggest characters in movie history, and this is like Daniel Craig's like final one. So there's still a reason to go out and see this movie, and I definitely enjoyed it enough to recommend it to everybody who's like the old movies or like spy movies. You should totally go check this movie out.
Yeah, I would totally say if you're into action movies, like honestly, I feel like if you walked into this not knowing it was his last movie, I feel like you'd still have a good time. You might not fully understand everything, but I feel like you'd at least enjoy yourself watching this movie.
Yeah, for sure. And like this one, like as unfortunate and not like as much as like I don't like want to rewatch it, like this one is very linked to Spectre, so that would be like a good, like at least if you had to watch one of them before this one, like that would be the one to watch, as like all the Bond films kind of like have a link to the previous one, which is cool. Like they're not like solo adventures. Like this series with Daniel Craig, I feel like has like a really overarching story. Like this one had even callbacks to to Casino Royale, which is really cool. And I'd love to just dive right into it with some spoilers here now. So if you guys haven't seen it, I suggest you go watch it. It's a really solid film. Go help it out at the box office if you feel comfortable, or if you don't, just feel waiting, then help it out with and get some legs. So I saw this movie first in regular theatrical. Anthony saw it in IMAX, and then Anthony was like raving about the IMAX. So he's like, you gotta go see it in IMAX. So I went and saw it in IMAX like today. And He was raving about two specific sequences that were shot in IMAX. To me, I'd already seen the movie, so I wasn't really watching it for like story purposes. I was watching it for aspect ratio reasons. And am I tripping, or is like the entire movie up until the opening song in IMAX?
That is correct. And then when you exit the opening song and they're coming into the window, the aspect ratio shrinks back down, which I thought was just I was like, that's amazing. I mean, I always love me some aspect ratio changes, and when they do them to an artistic level where they do something special with it. The only movie I've ever seen this in before was The Hunger Games: Catching Fire, where when they entered the arena, the aspect ratio rised as she rose into the stadium. And I mean, if you want to count The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1, that would technically count as the same thing, but it doesn't give that awe factor that IMAX does.
And on top of that, like that shot when they're going down the side of the building is freaking beautiful. How it shot at like blue hour and just the reflection in the glass, amazing stuff. But let's rewind back. This is the first Bond movie to like open up without a Bond action sequence, which I thought was kind of weird at first.
You know, it was weird at first, but then it led into the action sequence, and I felt like the way that this story is structured, it made sense to open it like that, because it would have been jarring to then exit that action sequence and then had that opening sequence with, you know, the Bond girl from Spectre.
Her name is Madeline. Okay.
I'm sorry, I was not getting her name. Watching Madeline's mother get murdered when the killer came to kill her father, and ironically, I had watched Spectre just a day, I think I literally watched it a day before, and so I literally the moment the sequence started, I knew what it was, and so it was kind of a cool throwback where if you listen to the dialogue of Spectre, it revealed the opening to this movie.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. And I do think like for this story, like it was important to show that flashback and then get a little peaceful life of James Bond as he's retired now, and then lead into the action sequence. I thought for this story in particular, it was really cool.
I thought that having that sequence there worked only because this villain does not show up again for probably the next, I don't know, at least 90
it's
minutes.
Probably an hour. Or at least
I'd say
it's
pretty close to 90 minutes where he finally, 90 minutes for when he last showed. Okay, maybe not. That's no, I don't know. It was a long time. I know he doesn't show up until very close to the end again.
The beginning was also like I knew more or less like what was going down, but like the way they decided to shoot it and stuff, it was very almost like horror-esque. Like there was a jump scare, and like my entire theater the first time literally like screamed when he was like in the window. I was like, damn, I didn't expect that.
You have to remind me what scene was in the window.
It's like the opening scene when he attacks the house, when she's like, she looks up from the couch and he's like right there.
Oh. You know what? I didn't jump. I kind of saw it coming, and
I did, but like my entire theater like screamed, and I was like, "What is going? Oh, okay, they're screaming!" Like it just took me off. It took me off guard, and just like overall, like the sequences and the locations and everything in this film was just like absolutely beautiful. You know, with the ice there, or like I said, we talked about like that shot on the skyscraper with the blue hour, or like even like that foggy forest. Like this movie's just beautiful.
This movie. You know, it's so weird because Spectre was shot by Sam Mendes as well as Skyfall, but because he switched cinematographers between them, I don't know, Spectre just doesn't do it for me, like, visually. Like, this movie
doesn't have Roger Deakins, bro.
Well, yeah, but you still have the same director. Like, how did he forget some of these? Like, I understand you don't have the same cinematographer, but like, it's the same director. Shouldn't you still be able to give that vision with the new cinematographer? I don't know. I just thought that Spectre kind of lacks that in that department, but then No Time to Die totally made up for it because it is quite beautifully shot.
Yeah. So yeah, Spectre has like the really awesome opening shot, and then the rest of the movie happens, and it's just downhill from there visually.
Well, no, there are some really cool sequences. I really like the scene where Bond goes into the meeting in Spectre, because that I felt was really well shot. But I think that's the last sequence of the movie. Yeah. Like, after that, it's all very, like, straightforward the way it's shot, and this movie, like, it experimented with the way it was shot, the way the camera angles worked, and it felt, like, really deep into the action, and obviously this director knew what he was doing with the IMAX cameras because it looked spectacular on the big screen.
Yeah, so I noticed it was the opening sequence up until there, and then they like inserted like a really quick segment of when he's on the boat going back to his house. That was in IMAX. And then I noticed the Cuba sequence was in IMAX. Am I missing anything else?
No, those were the two sequences. Just those.
Okay. Yeah.
But that made up 40 minutes of the film just right there.
Right, because of how long and extended those sequences are. And yeah, I was just really boggled by like how much of the footage they use, because like when you talked about it, you're like these two like sequences. So I just imagined like I thought it was just going to be like the opening car sequence, but it's literally the entire like opening of the film. So if you can go see it in IMAX, I highly recommend it.
This movie, how I was talking about sequences, if I had used the word sequence the way that The Force Awakens did, I would not have recommended this movie, because that was the most disappointing IMAX sequence I've ever watched, because it was the Millennium Falcon sequence. That sequence about 3 minutes long, and then the rest of the movie is back to normal format. And that was like super disappointing that they advertised that it was shot in IMAX and all of this. Like, don't advertise it's in IMAX if you shot 3 minutes. Like, I feel like there needs to be a minimum number, like at least 15 minutes needs to be shot in IMAX for you to be able to sit there proud that, hey, watch this in IMAX.
Nah, bro, I'd argue The Last Jedi IMAX sequence is better.
Too soon, man. Too soon.
For those of you that don't know, they advertised that there was IMAX in Last Jedi, and then we watched the entire movie, and we went an extra time in IMAX just to make sure, and there's no IMAX in the entire movie. It was really disappointing.
And I am someone who notices these aspect ratio changes the moment they happen. I'm literally sitting there, I'm like, what, was that it? No. That's the same aspect ratio. 2 hours in, the throne room sequence is coming up. I'm like, okay, maybe this is where they saved it. This would be a cool place to use it. Nope, nothing. Okay. And then the crate happens. I'm like, okay, maybe this godforsaken sequence is where they use it. Nope. Like, at this point, I would have taken the Casino Planet. But no, they were like, no, we're not going to give you nothing.
Yeah, like, and since I had already seen No Time to Die, I was strictly watching in IMAX just to watch those aspect ratio changes, and I'm glad I picked them up because they did look gorgeous. And so after the first, let's talk about the opening car stuff. I thought it was great and really cool, and the way he's interacting with her because he thinks she betrayed him and stuff is really awesome. And we get to use some car gadgets for the first time, really, and I think it was really exciting, like Kickstarter sequence for the Bond.
Surprisingly, based off how much of that opening sequence is spoiled in the trailers, it actually still had quite a few surprises up its sleeve, and It was exhilarating to watch. Like, I cannot remember the last time I sat there and I'm like completely engaged with how the action is unrolling on the screen.
Yeah, and especially with the trailers, Madeline is in the trailers fairly often, and so like when he goes and drops her off at the train, he's like, "No, peace out." I was like, "Whoa!" What? Like, I was like kind of surprised, like, "Oh, what route are we going with this film after that?"
Yeah, it definitely took a turn there. I mean, like you said, she was advertised, and then he put her on a train. I'm like, well, I've seen the trailers. I know that she was in it more, and I'm like, but
right.
when is she gonna come back? Because this is like 30 minutes in, and it's not gonna waste something like this. It's not gonna pull a 5 years later sub card, and then all of a sudden there they are, happy family together again. No, that would have been lame.
Yeah. Also, I did notice upon second viewing, like when she gets on the train and the doors close, she touches her stomach.
I noticed that the first time.
Yeah, I was like, oh, clever. But then the movie seamlessly transitions into the song, which was kind of new. Like they kind of just like fade, usually like close the movie and then like they go into the song. But this one just like very seamlessly went into it, and I thought all the graphics that were going on were really cool. And like smartly integrated, and it just was really surprisingly.
The song, like lyric wise, match, I personally was not a fan. Like, the song is a step down from Skyfall and Writings on the Wall from Spectre. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm just not a fan of her music, and so for me, like, it just didn't do it for me. And that's fine, because I know that there's people that are going to really enjoy the song that goes with the opening sequence, but for me, I don't know, it just didn't do it for me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way about the song, but I'm just talking about, like, the stuff that was going on during it and, like, how they integrated it into the film. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it was less, it gave less away about the movie, because I feel like Spectre, like, was almost like Mission Impossible and like practically revealing the movie during it, but instead of being like smart like Mission Impossible where it kept some things under wrap, like, I don't know, there's not a lot that could have been kept secret about Spectre, because its story is very linear with almost no like turns.
Yeah, and then this one, like, because I feel like it's so big and so much to unpack, it allowed a lot of room to like kind of move around and see where we're going. And this one just goes from action sequence to action sequence while also having a good bit of story in there too. So, and then we do the time jump, and then we get into the Cuba stuff, which is also amazing. And I thought Ana de Armas's character, while she's like barely in the film, she packed quite a punch.
Yeah, I thought she was excellent in it, and my girlfriend, while we were watching it, she was like, I feel like I've seen that girl before, and I'm like, yeah, she was from Knives Out, and she's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure, like, because of how well their relationship was, he got her more or less the role in this film because of that.
Oh yeah, I imagine that he definitely had a hand in helping her get this role. I mean, it's not to say that she's not talented herself, but I guarantee I guarantee he walked out of Knives Out and he's like, she did great. Let's bring her in. You know, no matter what sequence you can get, like even if it's only 20 minutes, let's do it. And you know, I feel like that's exactly what happened.
Like every action sequence in this is just shot amazingly. I just want to backtrack really quick to like the heist for the biolab, like that's beautiful. You know, just breaking in, they got all the lasers going on, like that stuff's really cool too.
Yeah, and I think, you know, even though it felt like this trailer had spoiled it, I think that also just gave new life to this movie when I realized that is not what this movie is. Like, no matter what they tried to advertise it as, like, this is completely different.
You know, especially with everything going on, you know, this whole like bioweapon is just it's a little bit more relevant today, and just adds some more like stakes and just relatability, and just makes the movie, you know, a little bit more timely.
Yeah, and that's not the only thing I felt that, like, just it felt more with the times. Like, Q is obviously gay in this movie before they even like say before they even say it, because they say it like I don't know 60 seconds later, but I'm just like I'm like, is he getting prepared for his date with his man? And then they said it, I'm like, gotcha.
Yeah,
and
you know, I totally saw it coming.
And you know, replacing Bond with a new 007 agent was like, yep, made absolute sense. Like, I don't know, I don't see why anyone would have an issue with it.
Yeah, no, coming to the world, he's like dead / retired, so I mean, like, they're interchangeable like with the numbers, and so yeah, you just got to put a new person in, and she's well accomplished and totally kicks ass in her own right too. So, and it was really fun seeing like their banter back and forth throughout the film.
Yeah, and I never felt like Bond was like petty towards her or anything like that. Like, He was respectful of the fact that he had walked away and someone else had been given his number.
Yeah, and then they pay the respect back when she ends up giving it back to him. So I thought that came full circle too.
Yeah, I really liked that. I wasn't expecting him to get his number back. And then, you know, that just tiny snippet of dialogue was, you know, it felt good.
Yeah, and just like all the characters here, like they're just hitting form, you know, like M, Q, Moneypenny, and 007, like they all just like fit these tiny pieces, and what's the guy's name, Tanner. They all have like tiny pieces to play in this film, and it's nice to have like that crew dynamic that we've kind of had since Skyfall.
Yeah, it definitely felt like everything was coming like round circle. Like it was finally completing the circle. And, you know, I don't think anyone could have expected that they would pull this off like this, especially after the reception of Spectre.
Right, and I think that just goes to show with like how much devotion. I even saw that Daniel Craig's a co-producer on this film. I don't know if he's produced the last ones, but that just...
He was actually a co-producer on Spectre as well.
Okay, so I mean that just goes to show you how he's taken an increased amount of involvement to these films. And especially for this one, because it is his last one, he really gives it all. It's probably one of his better performances out of all of them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. And like you said about the bioweapon, like, it holds heavy relevance, and I really had no issue with the plot. But moving forward with the movie, we then start, you know, diving deeper into our main villain, because he makes an appearance after the sequence in Cuba, and it's a very brief, you know, exchange before he disappears again for probably another 20 minutes. But, you know, he simply, drives the plot forward, because after the Cuba sequence, I feel like the filmmaker's like, okay, we're kind of in a slowdown here, so let's throw this in to start moving the plot towards where we need the ending to go.
Yeah, and this film really kind of, it's like the antagonist is kind of like two halves. You know, first it's like they're kind of like finishing off Spectre, and then they introduce the new Rami Malek's character to kind of finish it out. And you know, when he comes in with Madeline and puts the gives her the poison or whatever, and then they gotta get her and Bond together to talk to Christoph Waltz character, who's the bad guy from Spectre. That was the only part of the movie where I kind of like foresaw what was gonna, or predicted what was gonna happen. I'm like, he's gonna instinctively like touch her or something and then get it on him, and then he's gonna touch Christoph Waltz and then he's gonna die. That was the only part where I was like, I know what's going down.
Yeah, I saw it coming. I was curious if like just them being in the same room, because I don't feel like they had fully explained it yet. So I was curious if just being in the same room was going to be enough, or like eventually it would get to him, because it's it's a what they call it, like a micro robot.
Yeah, like nanobot stuff.
Yeah, and so I figured it would be able to move in the air, and so eventually he would just croak. But it was actually kind of interesting that instead, no, he had to actually touch him for him to die. But I love the fact that the camera, shows him grabbing him, and then the camera turns the other way while he's getting pulled off him, and then the camera turns back around, and he's just dead.
And it's just like a kind of clever way, like how this bioweapon works, and just shows you how dangerous it is. And I ended up feeling like the technology and like the plan of the bad guy was way more threatening than Rami Malek himself.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I don't know. I thought he was a fairly, like, him himself was fairly weak. Like, the actual danger to the movie was like an actual threat, but I don't feel like he was a good enough threat.
Yeah, like he was a very weak villain, and nothing against him. He's an amazing actor, has won an Oscar, but I just feel like the material he had to work with for the writing of this villain was on the weaker end.
Yeah, I would agree. He was fine, and that's pretty much where I'll leave it.
Yeah, and thank God, like there's enough padding for this movie, and he's barely in it enough, so it doesn't create it doesn't weigh it down too much, and it really gives the other parts of the movie time to shine in his stead, which it definitely do. And then we get the Bond follows Madeline back to her childhood home, and then surprise, we have a child. And
Baby Bond.
Immediately as I saw that child, I'm like, yeah, that's yours, dude. Despite them saying it's not.
Baby Bond.
Baby Bond.
Yeah, I guessed it the moment I saw her. Her blue eyes, like I'm just like, yeah,
man. 100%.
Yeah, and then I was kind of confused at that moment, because I was confused on what 007 was doing at that moment.
Yeah, she's kind of slacking, bro.
Well, and then when he was like, where is she? And she was right there. I thought that she had found Madeline and was going to kill Madeline. So I got like completely confused for a moment. But then obviously the plot caught up, and I was like, okay, that's not what I was thinking of.
Yeah, and then that sequence where she's like, we're tracking the guy that they're following, like the CIA guy that works for Rami Malek, and then he's like, oh, and then he's like, no, why is he? I told you not to track me. And then you're like, you put two and two, oh, they're like right on their ass. And I mean, that was like the only part where I was like, 007, like, what are you doing? Like, I thought you were supposed to be on this guy.
She was like nearby.
I mean, yes, but whatever.
She's there to pick him up off the side of the road. That was the whole reason she was there.
If she wasn't slacking, if she didn't stop to get coffee or whatever, then we wouldn't have a third act. I understand.
I imagine she's like just getting her bagel, and all of a sudden they're on Bond, and she just like spits out her coffee.
Missed opportunity, I'd say.
It would have been cool if she came in like towards the end, like she was nearby, and like she comes in at the end and just starts whooping ass. But sadly, that wasn't what happened.
Yeah, instead we get the driving sequence, and like the van was pretty. I mean, he knows how to work every car apparently. And then we get into this foggy forest, which I think the way they use the environment and like using his smarts to like outmaneuver all these guys, like I thought it was really cool.
I think that's the only sequence in the movie where I would have actually preferred a like longer version of it with more threats and like more of a feeling that he might actually be outnumbered. I feel like it was kind of breezed upon, and that's fine. Like it still really worked, but I feel like it could have worked better if like you could feel the odds against him.
Yeah, upon rewatching, I was like, he takes him out really fast, and then like the guy is in the CIA guy's in the car, and then he like guns him down. He just gets out of the way, and the dude's dead. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty fast. And then Remy Malek character shows up again for like 30 seconds before he pieces out again for like another 5-10 minutes.
I'm not sure what is up with this villain. Like he straight up shows up and then he just goes peace and he's just out of there.
Yeah,
he
shows up
like
for one scene and then leaves forever.
I mean, I'm curious, like was this an actual intentional decision or like was he busy and so they just had to keep bringing him back? Like, come on, man, we need you for this scene. He said, okay, I'm on the plane.
I don't know, but then that leads us into the final act, and like there's this whole like essentially like a heist or like an invasion of this island, which is Bond and 007, and it was cool. I don't know if it's like my favorite action sequence. I will say though, when he's going to clear the tower to open up the doors, it's like a one shot.
I don't know if I actually noticed that or not. Don't think I noticed it was one shot. I noticed it was a very long sequence. I wasn't sure if it had been cut anywhere. But yeah, it was really well shot.
Yeah.
And, I feel like the final heist sequence is more about the stakes. It's building that stakes to make the ending really nail in. Like, I feel like it's more about the stakes than it is delivering one last punch of an action sequence. And surprisingly, the sequence actually does once he goes to get up the tower. But up before that point, I feel like it's all about grounding the stake in the ground on what's going to then happen in the next, few minutes.
Right, they're unleashing the virus and all these other countries are getting involved. They're like, yo, what are y'all doing out here? Because these have repercussions and you can't just do that. And you can't just be shooting missiles out of anywhere just because you want to. Like, all these things have actions and consequences. And that's the sequence I was talking about when he's climbing up the tower. It's like one shot. But and then the villain does this like monologue stuff. He comes back and it's just a bunch of like, I don't care, bro. Like, just keep going.
Come on, he's spieling exposition in order for the final moment to hit hard.
I know, we got to set up this poison stuff, man.
I mean, it's really the only purpose he has in the movie, outside of, bringing these people all together, blah, blah, blah. But outside of that, like, purpose, that's just one thing to do in this movie, is smack a Bond in the face.
Yeah.
Just once. Just hit him once. Like.
Yeah, and he's really, really ready to risk it all and just chill on the island that's about to explode just so he can hit Bond in the face.
Yo, this dude did not have a plan. He's like, I'm dying today, so I'm taking this guy out with me. And then, like, he's like, no. I didn't actually want to kill you. I just wanted to make your life miserable.
Yeah, like he was going off, like he had the daughter and he's like, he let her go and he's like, all right, let's peace out. Our buyer's coming. I thought he was like getting ready to leave or whatever. And then he's just chilling there. I was like, what are you doing, bro?
Dude, I want to read this guy's plan. Like, what was his evil plan? Because like, I feel like somewhere along he scribbled out the plan, like the final plan, and just went smack Bond with weapon.
Yeah. It's not good. It's not a good villain. Not a good villain. Especially when we have great villains in the franchise. It's just kind of a disappointment.
I would say that like he is the weaker part of this movie. And 100%. That's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Thankfully the rest of the movie makes up for it.
Yeah, like arguably like the dude with the eye is like a bigger like recurring villain. He probably has more screen time, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. That dude just like walks into every scene. He's like, I'm the imposing threat.
Yeah, he's the Dave Bautista of this movie.
You know what? That is who he is, but he's not. He doesn't take up as much of the screen, if you get what I mean.
Oh yeah, I know. What do you mean, Dave Bautista? I didn't even see Dave Bautista. You can't see him. That's a Drax joke. If you didn't get that,
I got it. Yeah.
Anyway.
I didn't hear his munching, so he never appeared.
Yeah.
If
he's
he'd
not in
just
these
eaten
movies.
his snack, maybe we would have seen him. Maybe he was sitting right next to Bond the whole time with a gun, and he's just waiting for him to look at him, but he never did.
Yeah. Maybe they're fighting nobody. I don't know. But back to No Time to Die. They get everybody back, and it was all sort of convenient how like he just let everybody go and everybody found their way back, and he's like, all right, go off in the boat. And the way they shot this when they're like speeding off on the boat and Madeline and the daughter kind of get washed up in a bath of light, I'm like, yeah, something's gonna happen.
You know, the sequence itself reminds me of Star Trek 2009.
How so?
Well, in Star Trek 2009, it doesn't like go beat for beat, but the whole premise that the father's going to die. Well, granted, it's different scenarios. You know, James T. Kirk is being born at the moment that his dad dies, but like the sense of the father figure dies in order to protect the child. Like that's precisely what happened, all because a villain did X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, so basically, Rami Malek only does one thing, and he poisons Bond so that he cannot live a life with Madeline and his daughter, or else he would kill them if he came into close proximity with them. So, and he already he ambushes Bond because he can't beat him in one-on-one, obviously, and takes him out, and he's in critical condition, and he's like, well, crap, if I can't live a life with them, and I'm already pretty screwed up, I'm not getting off this island. So, and he calls the missile strike on himself, and goes out with a bang, literally.
Well, he'd already called the strike while he still had he still had the chance to get out of there. Now, granted, I'm not sure why he didn't defend the throne room for at least a minute or so. This is some weak video games.
How did they reclose? Like,
I think he went up there.
That's some plot right there.
I think he was literally just probably sitting in the corner, and he's like, "Come on, do it," and then he did. He just lights and flip the switch the other.
Oh my god,
dude! I'm not kidding. Like, imagine if a video game did this garbage, where it tells you to run to the next destination, but instead of having you defend, it's like in Destiny, where it makes you defend whenever the ghost does something. Bond should have defended it for the 60 seconds till he was sure no one else was gonna go.
Gosh,
the whole movie would have been different if he had stayed for just a minute.
Yeah, then Rami Malek would have come and he would just blasted his ass, and he's like, "Okay, cool," just walks off. But this movie does kill him, and this is the first Bond movie to ever kill James Bond, and it was a solid death. It was meaningful, and it was for the right reasons. Especially with those stakes that they set up because how dangerous this weapon is. They had to be done, and not gonna lie, after seeing Bond go through all this stuff over this past week, because I rewatched them all, and then that phone call he has with Madeline, it hit me in the feels, man. I was almost there.
I don't know what you're talking about, dude. The only thing I heard was the Hans Zimmer score blasting over the IMAX speakers.
Oh, yeah. Hans Zimmer, again, amazing job with the score here.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I didn't really notice it was him until his death music kicked in, and I'm like, oh, that is some Zimmer music there.
That's some Zimmer, man. But yeah, it was emotional, man. And then he dies, and she's on the phone with him, and that sucks. And then they all have to just toast with all the MI6 people, and then they read a really nice passage. It just hits you home, and then she's driving away into the sunset. We get the Spectre ending, and it also bookends with how the movie started, more or less. And she's like, "I'm going to tell you about your dad," and I'm like, "Damn, this is hitting me, man."
Yeah, its ending was very touching, and it definitely it killed Bond, and then it kind of closed the book, wrapped it up, and put a nice bow on it. It was a really touching finale, and I wasn't really expecting that going in.
Yeah, and even the last shot, it's it goes back to that tunnel with the opening, how we always do the James Bond sequences, and so it just is a really fitting end to the character, and just shows you how much he gave to his country and to the people around him and to the world, and it was really cool to see.
And if you had asked me after watching Spectre if I felt there was more that this could go, I probably would have told you no, because it didn't feel like there was much more to tell after Spectre. And thankfully, the filmmakers and everyone behind it found one last reason to come back. And, I felt it was a really touching movie to Daniel Craig, while also not like halting the brakes or anything. It wasn't like an extended episode of The Walking Dead where someone's been bitten but they survive for the next 47 minutes and outstay their welcome. Like, you finish this movie off and you're really just sitting there like, oh come on, like, couldn't I have had one more Daniel Craig movie? Like, he gave it his all here, but it's like, no, this is it.
Yeah, they really go for it in this movie, and it hits, and just to show like how much this is like his movie, his franchise. Like, he dies in like within 5 minutes. I don't even know if there's 5 more minutes left in the movie. Like, he dies and this movie ends.
I feel like this is a scenario where if this movie had like 20 more minutes to go and he was dead, I don't know what they would have done.
Yeah, I mean, like, you could have done like a funeral for like the country and like a serviceman, but like, how necessary is that? Like, I feel like all of that was captured with the MI6 people when they did that toast.
Yeah, I would say the same. And I'm honestly glad that this movie got released. And it'll be a shame if this movie doesn't break even for MGM, but I'm glad it was released to public rather than sitting in a vault until they saw box office numbers being to a point where it would have been time to release it. Because I feel like by then, if we'd had to wait any longer, if we'd had to wait until next October or something, I feel like this movie would have just been stale.
I feel like there's not like so much pressure on this movie to like be like, yeah, like a whole bunch of extra money to like fund the next one because this is the last one, and it also has that weight behind it for people to go out and see it anyways. And I mean, like, let's be real here, like, this is probably not going to be like the last Bond. Like, this character lives on, so give it like 10 or whatever years, maybe we'll get another one. But for this one just to be out now and to celebrate it now, I think is just really good that it's finally happening.
I always keep hearing, like, ever since No Time to Die came out, everyone's like, they got to reinvigorate the franchise. And I feel like this one was able to, like, kind of reinvigorate it without getting rid of its lead. Like, I felt like this Bond, like, was more relatable to today than probably any of the other Bonds have been, and especially to, like, social norms and, just having more diverse cast. I mean, it definitely it felt more modern than Spectre.
Yeah, and especially with like what the subject matter of the film was, with the bioweapon and everything, just in that kind of world we live in with that stuff in the back of our minds, like, definitely. And I don't think they needed a new lead to do it. And just like this entire franchise has done a really good job of bringing Bond into the modern era. Even, I mean, Spectre also had just like that intelligence oversight, which is something that we're constantly thinking about today as well. And so, like, this franchise does a really good job of just being with the times, and I think they really hit a good stride with this one too.
Yeah, but I'm still gonna sit here and tell you that I would take Henry Cavill as Bond. Hands down. Sorry, I know that it's a little too soon, but I'm throwing my man Henry Cavill out there for the next Bond.
Okay, that's fair. I can totally see it.
Granted, he said I think he would prefer to be a villain, and you know what? I'm all good with him being a villain as long as I don't have to see that stupid mustache again.
Yeah, I mean, arguably he already got to play a villain in this fine movie in Mission Impossible, so who knows? Maybe it's time for him to be the hero now. But
he's got a double win.
And I think it was smart for them to like kind of push that conversation aside until this movie got finished and was out there, because this movie deserved the spotlight.
Yeah, it's another one of those, like, when you hit an ending, you have to actually hit the brakes, and you can't just be looking towards the future. I think it's something that Endgame did really well. And, we didn't get Phase 4 announced for months. I mean, granted, in a hypothetical world, modern day cinema could hopefully go without having to announce a movie every 5 seconds. But sadly, today, we're just, like, overwhelmed with the amount of things that are being brought forward. And so the fact that the producers of Bond have come out and said that we don't plan to announce who we're going to choose or where we're taking the direction of the franchise, because this is Daniel Craig's swan song and we want to respect that. And I think that that's, it's touching in a way, because not a lot of movies, producers, or studios would do that nowadays.
Yeah, and like you said it perfectly. Like, this is the swan song for Daniel Craig. It's right up there to me with like Logan, or how RDJ went out as Iron Man, or like kind of like Dark Knight Rises ending, and like this is the end of an era for a character that we've come to know and love. And I haven't watched any other of the Bond films, but I still hold this guy near and dear to my heart. Like, this is my Bond, and I can gladly say, like, despite its ups and downs, like, this is a really solid series of films.
Yeah, and not everything in his section of movies went perfectly, and I know that audiences weren't always a fan of the direction that this 5-movie series took, but at the end of the day, I felt like there is enough positive out of all 5 movies and there is negative, and so I feel like looking back, this series isn't just going to be like thrown away. And I feel like there's there's the chance when you introduce a new take on a character, the audiences will reject it. But I think that with Daniel Craig, I feel like the Bond fans did embrace it, and I couldn't now imagine someone else being Bond. And granted, neither of us have seen any of the other Bonds, so now it would be even more weird to go and watch another Bond.
Yeah. But definitely moving forward, like, this is going to be something cool to have, just like as a completed piece of work. And now, like, we're going to be like the fans, like the previous Bond, like they're like skeptical when Daniel Craig signed on. We're going to be those guys that love Daniel Craig. And then when they announce a new one, we're going to be skeptical. So, I mean, it's this constant cycle, and now it's cool to just be part of that loop.
Now, granted, we're a little bit different than most people. Even if we're skeptical, we will probably still go and see it. I feel like that's the difference nowadays with people, is that they see something they don't like, and they're like, I'm not going to watch it, period. We're like, if we see something in the trailer we don't like, we'll say, we like Daniel Craig. The same people are still technically behind the scenes. The producers are still there. Obviously, they're trying to do what they think is best, and we'll obviously go out to, see what they've, done to bring the franchise back. Because I imagine we will not see another Bond at least for, at the very earliest, probably until after 2025 at this rate.
Yeah, and, like, to all y'all Twilight haters, we're excited for the Batman. So, doesn't matter.
Absolutely. Did you see the bone-crushing punt? Okay, it's a little violent. I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, but it's just like, when an actor gets announced as something, these days there's so much blowback, even if they're a great actor, and Robert Pattinson is a great actor, and I imagine whoever they get next as Bond is going to be a great actor, and I still imagine there's going to be people that are like, how can he play Bond, or he's no Daniel Craig, or I like Pierce Brosnan more. But you got to just give them a chance and give faith that these filmmakers and these producers know what they're doing, and that these are solid actors, that they're just not getting anybody. And you just got to embrace it as a fan of movies.
The best way to look at it is that RDJ, when he was cast as Iron Man, was an unknown. And so no matter who they choose, they can step into that role and make it their own. And, us as audience members can learn to embrace it and love it. And it doesn't mean that you have to support something you hate. If they announce someone, you watch and you give it a try and you say, nah, this isn't for me, you at least gave it a chance. But if you're going to sit there and say, no, the trailers weren't interested, but I was interested in the story because it was a Bond film, I feel like that's just disrespectful to the franchise.
Yeah, so just keep an open mind. Just be ready for whatever comes next. That's basically what we're trying to get at.
Yeah, I would agree.
But, yeah, and end of the day, solid exit for Daniel Craig as James Bond. I really had a good time with this movie. I mean, of course I did. I saw it twice within 24 hours. And so if you guys haven't checked it out, I highly recommend you go see it this weekend or whenever you can get the time.
Yeah, I also will be seeing it again this week after seeing it beforehand. So, I mean, we really do like this movie. And I know that, we did trash upon Venom, Let There Be Carnage, but, there are times where movies catch us off guard and they end up being just excellent pieces of work, and that's precisely what this ended up doing. And so 100%. I'm really happy that we got this movie. And so next week, we're going to be talking about Alien, the beloved franchise that has more misstepped calculations than good entries.
But those good entries keep it up there. But yeah, just because it's October and we want to do something a little more on the horror thriller side. So we're going to be talking about that next week. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like and comment, all that fun stuff, and we'll catch you guys next week.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Timebreaker Podcast.
If you did enjoy it, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe, and make sure to ring that notification bell for new episodes every Wednesday.
See you next week.